Hi everyone! Tom was here, back at it with another movie review. It's been a little while since we covered a movie, and I felt this one was worthy, but not necessarily for the reasons that you think. I woke up on Friday and my son is on a teenage sleep schedule of waking up at about 3 a.m. and being wide awake and alert for the rest of the day, and then falling asleep at 3 p.m., rinse, repeat. And he's like, so I watched Happy Gilmore 2. I didn't even realize it was out. And then I got a text later from a friend that went, hey, did you watch Happy Gilmore 2 yet? And I went, I believe the response was, I wasn't brave enough yet. Because I grew up as a kid of the late 80s, the early 90s. There was a time, and I mentioned this in another video, where Adam Sandler was the funniest person on the planet. To a certain age, of which I was one of those. And I hold Happy Gilmore as the 1A of Adam Sandler movies. So much so that in my background of nostalgia here of all these 80s and 90s, mostly kids staples of mine with a few notable adult exceptions, I do have a signed Happy Gilmore script from Adam Sandler that I most recently added Christopher McDonald to at Steel City Con. So it's Shooter, it's Happy, on that script, it always sits behind me in videos. That's how much I hold Happy Gilmore in high regard. Now, Adam Sandler's track record in most recent years has not been what you would call stellar or terrific. I think Adam Sandler movies are a fun hang. And you hear that from people that are in them. People that he collaborates with regularly, or even people that do one for the first time. They seem to genuinely enjoy the experience. And I think if you filmed that, and you put that out as a movie, it would probably be better than almost any recent Adam Sandler movie to date. Especially since he signed the Netflix contract. The movies that he has put out have been bad. I mean, just mostly unfunny, bad films. And, people were like, oh, what about Uncut Gems? That wasn't a Netflix one. That wasn't a comedy. What it proves is that Adam Sandler is a far better actor than we all gave him credit for. But at the same time, it's his comedy things as of date, other than the stand-up special. The stand-up special and his live show that I went to in Pittsburgh was actually really good. And I think I know the reason why, because it's in small doses. It's not a film. But when you're stepping on what I consider hallowed ground with Happy Gilmore 2, making a sequel to probably his greatest movie, or at least in my opinion, his greatest movie that he's put out ever, that's where concern comes in. Because the last few movies, not so great. And now you're stepping into Happy Gilmore, and it's like, oh man, it's been some time. Can we pull this off? Well, in my opinion, ultimately, no. They did not pull this off. I watched this movie on Friday. I'm filming this on Sunday. So on Friday night, late evening, I watched this film. And had a day to reflect on what exactly happened. And felt compelled to make this video on Sunday. So we are going to get into this, the breakdown of Happy Gilmore 2 and why I felt it ultimately missed the mark on Tom Was Here.
Hey, Shooter McGavin here, Chris McDonald. I'm watching Tom Was Here, and Tom is here, so check it out.
Okay, so we're going to get into spoiler territory, so if you have not watched this film as of yet, please feel free to stop this video now, bookmark it, like it, whatever you'd like to do. Come back and watch it at a later date so you can understand kind of where I've come from. And there might be a large contingent of people that do like Happy Gilmore 2, and I don't begrudge you for that. I'm just personally saying my own personal opinion as a love for the original. I'll tell you why it missed the mark for me. Okay. So starting out, like I said, we will get into spoiler warnings, so you've been warned. Within the first few minutes, they kill off Virginia. Okay, now I understand it's the same rehash joke of several, in fact, too many rehash jokes from the original, where the idea is that Happy killed his dad with a slap shot, and he killed Virginia with an errant tee shot. Okay, all right, fine. All that aside, the dad was there, and it was funny because it was like you didn't, there was no anything with the dad. He was just like, hey, here's his dad. Oh, his dad's dead. Like within the first few minutes, and they explained why, why he was living with his grandmother. It kind of hit tonally. This personally did not hit tonally because it took a legacy character. It took someone that you had an investment in, both her and Happy's relationship, and you murdered it in the street. Now, I understand that there's adversity, like a character has to have adversity. I get that. However, where you lose me is that you took that character and you just like, okay, that person's dead now, and you're like, okay, that already, you're starting it off on a comedy on the saddest note humanly possible. And this aren't real people. This is just a movie after all. It's silly, but there's a weird thing that Hollywood has been doing as of late, where they bring back these beloved characters, and they're like, "You're so excited." Disney is known for this. Disney this is Disney's bread and butter. Well, they take a character, you're like, "Guess what, guys? Luke Skywalker's back and Indiana Jones is back. Don't you want to see those characters on the big screen?" You're like, "Yeah, sure I do. I want to see those characters on the big screen." I'm like, "Cool. We're going to make them old," which, I mean, nature does that, but we're going to make them sad. Not only were they old, just naturally, and then just rehashing the same films over and over again because nobody can greenlight any new ideas anymore because you have to have a sequel or a requel or any type of different rehashing of things. But let's make them also, that character you love, they're the saddest version. They're the most depressed version of that character they could possibly be. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun to see Indiana Jones at the end of his rope? Or Luke Skywalker living on an island alone, sad and alone? Is it fun to see Happy Gilmore has now killed his wife and he's an alcoholic and he's lost everything and he's working at a grocery store? You're like, that's great, right? No, it's not great. Look, you don't want to see your characters sad and old, these people that you beloved people that you grew up, plus, what that does? I'll tell you what that does. Not only does it ruin the scope of the sequel, but it ruins the original film. Let me clarify. You can look past it and not have it ruin everything, but look no further than, say, Ghostbusters Afterlife, okay? A movie that I liked, by the way. Ghostbusters Afterlife gave a concept that Egon, the Ghostbusters folded up shop, and Egon went to live alone in the middle of the country, like Oklahoma, or I can't remember what state it was, to be a sad old weird man for the rest of his life until he died alone and sad. That's horrible. Like, if you think it through, you're like, okay, the events of Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, that in the next few years, Egon's going to leave and go live alone and be a hermit for the rest of his days in some sad old, like, you know what I mean? Like, it ruins everything. And Happy Gilmore 2, it's kind of the same way. It's like, okay, you took this character and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to see, like, him and Virginia, they're raising these kids. Like, it started out interesting, like, they have all these kids, and, I was like, well, where's the, obviously, there's got to be some adversity to build off, and Virginia as a character wasn't going to let Happy give up on golf, so there had to be a reason of why, and then she died, and he's alone and sad. You're like, oh, okay, already, you're starting off in a strange note. And for the first little bit, it drags on a good bit, like, to really hammer home how sad and desperate, alone and sad he is, and you're like, jeez, like, is this what we came back for? Is this your beloved character, Happy Gilmore, that he came back all alone and sad? And that's really what they were going for. It's strange to me. It's an odd choice. So I don't know why they do these certain things, but it seems this is a Hollywood staple as of late. Bring back legacy characters, get you into the theater, or get you watching Netflix, and then make that character the saddest version possible. Now, having said that, Adam Sandler's family is all in this. His daughter plays his actual daughter. His other daughter is in the AA group with him, and his wife is the dance teacher that his daughter has. They weren't distracting. They were fine. If let's put it this way, I would put my family in films. If you could put your family in films, that's great. But there are downsides to that. If you've watched The Godfather 3, after all, there's the Sofia Coppola effect. She was painfully painfully bad in that film, and really ruined the overall experience because she is not a good actor, and she was trying to hold her own against Andy Garcia, Al Pacino, all these people, and you're like, oh, she's just distracting in every way. They weren't necessarily distracting. The only time that ever got weird was like he's in the AA meeting, and his one daughter looks identical to him, so it was, it's like, oh, and this daughter, like they're talking to each other, like they look identical. Of course, like it's obvious that it's his daughter, but they were fine ultimately. But if I had to give a bright spot, if there's one character that really, like, they were having an absolute blast bringing back their character, it was Shooter McGavin. It was Chris McDonald. Not just because he did the intro for the channel. He's I appreciate that he did, for sure. But Christopher McDonald relished being in here. You could tell with every moment. In fact, he was the few bright spots where I actually got like a laugh. The one thing where he's sitting in this cell and reading The Shining and laughing actually made me genuinely laugh. Like I said, there are rare few hits and moments here or there that I got a little smile or a laugh, but ultimately most of it missed the mark. The odd thing about Shooter, the part that didn't really make sense, is that, okay, so you buy into the fact that Shooter's life was ruined after that tour championship, and they want to take it a step further. It's a comedy after all, so you can take some liberties. That he went crazy and was in a insane asylum for the last 30 years or so, with his whole purpose in life now is to kill Happy Gilmore. So he shows up at the cemetery to visit Virginia because he didn't realize Virginia had died, and Happy shows up, and they get into a fight, a small fight, like a 2-minute fight, like kind of, trying to reminisce about the Bob Barker thing. And I do, even though it's a comedy, I do thought it was silly and kind of funny that they had both Bob Barker, the jackass guy, the grandma, and Virginia in the same cemetery. I was okay with that. But after this fight, after he tried to, and let me paraphrase, and like I said, I try to run a PG channel, but I'm gonna make a direct quote. After he threatened to burn Grandma's house down and piss on the ashes, and that Happy ruined his life, like they hate each other with a passion. After a small fight, they're like, "Hey, buddy, how you been?" Like, it's all right. That's where once again you lose me again. Like, it's like that didn't make any sense. The idea, kind of the fun idea, was it wouldn't it be if it was like Happy versus Shooter on the senior tour, just like one last time. And Shooter being like the old, like bitter thing, but he's going to beat Happy this time around. Like, they're going to do it. He's going to beat him this time. And, and ultimately it would have ended in Happy's favor. But them being friendly just kind of like missed the mark tonally. For me, like, it was just kind of like, it was silly and strange. And, I get why they did it, but it's just like, it was odd. It was an odd choice. Okay, so that wasn't the only character they brought back. They also brought back Ben Stiller's character, Hal L., who was the caretaker at the nursing home. I was trying to figure out how exactly they would bring him back. They brought him back as his AA sponsor, and I like Ben Stiller a ton, but there was no reason for him to be here other than like a cameo. So when they did these like scenes of when he was there, and he didn't even really seem like he was playing the same version of the character. Like, it was a little strange. It was a little like, I don't know why he was there. It just seemed like odd for him to be there and be in this, like, he ultimately, I think the Ben Stiller scenes they could have cut out of the movie and still been fine, like, for the most part. And I like Ben Stiller. Like I said, it's just there wasn't a reason for him to be there other than like a small cameo for other things. The odd thing, and that's the question that kind of rattled in my brain throughout this entire one, is who is this movie for? Because it seemed to be that they weren't playing for people that watched Happy Gilmore a ton. Because if you're a kid of the 90s, you loved Happy Gilmore, you watched Happy Gilmore a boatload. You didn't know just Happy's lines. You knew Shooter's lines. You knew the Jackass guy's lines. You knew everybody's lines. So you watched the movie a boatload. Whenever a character would show up, or someone related to a character that unfortunately the actor or person passed away, they had to flash back to that character, almost like if you're someone that's like, oh, you're just gonna watch Happy Gilmore 2 without watching Happy Gilmore 1, so let's remind you of this character, or this throwback to this character from Happy Gilmore 1. So is this for people that have never seen Happy Gilmore? Because if it is, that's odd, and if it's not, certainly not for people that love Happy Gilmore and watch it multiple times, so that just seemed odd too. The whole strange thing of throwing back every time someone showed up, because they did it a ton. And then, if you never watched Happy Gilmore 1, and you just watch Happy Gilmore 2, because Bad Bunny's in it, or Travis Kelce, or one of these other bozos is in here, they did all the same, they did a ton of references to the original, and you wouldn't understand what is going on and why this was something. I don't understand why they did some of those. The other thing is that for people that know me personally, they know that I've had a grudge, and for no reason whatsoever, just for years, against Haley Joel Osment. I hate the man. I hated him as a child. I hate him now. I don't know why exactly. I mean, I kind of had, there's some reasons why, but they're stupid reasons. But there's certain people in life that you decide that you don't like, and Haley Joel Osment is one of those people. So for him as being the villain, I guess you could say, or I guess he's not really the villain. The guy that ran the upstart golf league is kind of the villain, but both of them and that crew in general were utterly pointless. Like, there was no real reason for them to exist. Other than, let's get past these people. Like Shooter was a terrific villain, terrific heel villain. These people were not. They were like placeholders. They weren't really good at what they were doing. They weren't just there. And that's not to say they weren't, the performances weren't okay. It's just there was no reason for them to really exist other than, okay, this is going to be this temporary thing that Happy's got to get past, and that's it. That's the extent of it. There's no other reason. It seems strange. It's an odd choice for sure. And like I said, the villains didn't really do it for me. And even more so, like when Happy and Shooter teamed up, like that kind of made sense to go against these people. But ultimately, there was no real point to that. I don't know. It just seemed odd. And then we'll get into the distracting cameos, of which the vast majority of them were wasteful. And I'm not talking about people like John Daly, because John Daly was a pretty solid bright spot of the movie. He was also more than a cameo. He was kind of a regular character in there. I'm talking, like even Bad Bunny was a regular character in there. I'm talking people like Travis Kelce, who there was no real point to shoehorn them in. I'm talking about people like Kelsey Plum, or, the podcast people, the YouTube people that were just kind of there. Post Malone, just kind of there. Guy Fieri, anybody that Adam Sandler reached out to, like, you want like a little scene in this movie? Here, we'll write something in for you. That's what it felt like. It felt like they were just there, just to be there, and that was it. Hang out a day on set, probably have a great time, but ultimately add nothing to the movie because it was pointless. And then there was also wastes of quality, talented people like Steve Buscemi, who, is generally terrific, but it's just like he was just there. They're just like, because the guy wants Steve in the movie, let's just make him, I don't know, just some weird guy that lives next door. Okay, cool. Like, it was just like, all right, well, why are we doing this at this point? And yeah, okay, that's cool that they had a ton of golf people, and I think some of them actually, like, legitimately relished wanting to be in there, like Scotty Scheffler seemed to be having a great time, like he was doing that, but generally athletes are terrible actors and they stand out as hollow. That's why athletes usually, everybody, musicians want to be actors want to be musicians, athletes want to be actors or musicians. It's just, you never want to be the thing that you are, but when you attempt to do the other thing, you're generally bad at it. But I was fine with, like I thought Nicholas and kind of the older guys, Freddie Couples and whatever, they held their own. But the younger guys, like a lot of them, were a little stiff, a little hollow, and that's to be expected. But it was cool to have some actual golf people in there. Like Lee Trevino, the older guys, they seemed to be having thing. When Trevino was in the first one too, and he was great as well, even though it was like just, like a quick little cameo. But I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was fine to have them in there. And like I said, Scheffler seemed to be a bright spot among them, but the vast majority of them were kind of stilted and hollow and bad. So ultimately, like I said, without getting into too much beyond the Virginia thing, Happy saves golf, Shooter helps, Bad Bunny's there. I guess he was not overly distracting as the caddy. He was semi-fine, I guess. But ultimately, who is this movie for, is the question. Who is this for? It certainly doesn't seem to be for people that are fans of the original Happy Gilmore. Unless the hook of that is retreading the same jokes. Like I'll tell you what fell completely flat for me. Okay, you had Chubb's son, and there was a rumor that Tiger Woods was actually going to play Chubb's son, and that would have been kind of an interesting take to see how that would have went. But ultimately, it ended up being a guy that worked at like a mini golf course, and then Sandler shakes his hand, the arm breaks off, like he has a wooden hand too, and they did like the one-line throwaway of why he has a wooden hand, and there were so many of those things where it was just like, this movie was 2 hours long, and you could have cut a considerable amount from it, and it probably would have been tonally better and much easier to watch, but ultimately they didn't, and it wasn't. So now take this with someone who, like I said, was when 93, I was roughly 10 years old when this movie came out, and now I'm in my 40s. Sandler, who was 30 years old when this movie came out, is now pushing 60. So obviously there is a tonal shift there. There's certain things that work when you're 10 years old that don't necessarily work when you're 40, that work when you're 30 years old and don't necessarily work when you're 60. I get all that. But I think there's a way to have done this in a certain way that would have offered the right amount of fan service, and you could have added cameos and that would have been fine, and ultimately have made it a better film overall. The same writers were back. They had the director from the original, even though he did not direct this one. They had several people that could have explained what, they could have been like, all right, let's collab on this together and make this the best possible thing. Like the scene, all right, just to go back, there's a scene where Happy's trying to get his game back, and he joins a group of other golfers. They literally took 3 random people who you don't buy necessarily that they would be friends normally in real life, like 3 people with different character traits, and they threw them all together, and then like Happy's like the 4th, and he's bad, and that scene went on very, very long. And I think everybody was trying to have fun with it, to be honest with you. I think they were. But it's like, you can have fun, but then when the cameras roll, you actually gotta make it fun for the audience. And that seems to be where Adam Sandler movies are lost as of late. Where I think they have a blast filming it, I have no doubt they do. But then you get to a certain point where, like, it's like on the screen, it doesn't compute. It doesn't translate. You try to come in without a preconceived notion of it being, it's like, oh, this is going to be bad. Like, you try to come in with an open mind, and ultimately it ends up being disappointing. And that's kind of what it boils down to. His sons that were there were, I guess, okay. Like, there was no real reason for them to be there. The story was about the daughter, going to dance school, and he needed to raise the money, so that's why he decided to go into golfing, and so raise the money for this dance school. And that was ultimately it. That was the thing. They added the kids there. They had a couple scenes that were, there. But that was a lot of things. There was a lot of times people were just there to be there, and ultimately did not really add anything to the movie. And the Virginia death thing didn't work for me ever. And him being sad for like the vast majority of the movie, and him being a drunk didn't really work for me. And the few things it did is that, when he went to his happy place, like as an older guy, it's a change. It's something like, what makes you happy when you're pushing 60? Like, okay, that your pants fit better, that all this stuff, or that you're laughing watching, TikToks on the toilet or something. Okay, fine. That you get me. Okay, that works as well. But those seem to be few and far between. And in a thing of rehashing jokes, introducing characters that didn't need to be reintroduced, major tonal shifts of certain characters that were out of place and didn't make sense, And then your lead character being the saddest version he could possibly be, which seems to be a Hollywood staple as of late, especially if you're an older sequel character, just didn't work for me. I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Did you like this movie? Did you like the original film? Did you watch the original film before you watched Happy Gilmore 2? Or did you watch Happy Gilmore 2 because there were characters and people, cameos and things that you wanted to see and ultimately didn't care about any of the characters involved? That's what I'd be curious about, because I'm curious about the people that watch this film and love it from the original to the sequel, or people that watch the original, love the original, and watch the sequel and were like, oh, this is great too. Because I've seen a wide smattering of comments all over the internet. There's people that like this movie. There's people that hate this movie with a passion. Ultimately, for me, I found it to be disappointing. That's where I was. And I wasn't even particularly, thrilled at its existence in the first place. Because you're taking a legacy character and you're ultimately stepping on it. Like, you're taking these characters that you kind of grew up with, and you're ultimately making them the worst versions of them they can possibly be. Not everyone. And then you're taking characters that the idea of their whole life is to hate this other character, and then within 20 seconds they're like, we're best friends. It doesn't make sense. And then you're taking characters that unfortunately are based on real people that passed away, and you're taking a watered down version of their child, and you're then making it a thing like the Eminem thing is the Jackass Kid thing. It was fine, I guess. You had to do something, but it's just like, okay, like ultimately it was just like, here's another distracting cameo of many distracting cameos, and his one was better than most. The thing that I think annoyed me the most is that they took a storyline where if you cut this one tendon or this thing in your hip, this surgery, that you can swing the ball with so much torque that you can hit the ball 500 yards. That's stupid. And I understand, like, why didn't you just be like, oh, they're genetically modified, we made them half cyborg and they can hit the ball 500 yards. But that's what made it really stupid. It's like, okay, Haley Joel Osment got this ligament cut and he can hit the ball 500 yards. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, it's dumb. I understand it's a comedy, but it's dumb. But that'll do it. Happy Gilmore 2 exists. It's out in the world. Watch it for the cameos, should you so choose. Watch it for Shooter McGavin, who's terrific. Chris McDonald's terrific in this film. Watch it for, attempt to, kind of rehash the glory of what Happy Gilmore was. But don't watch it thinking it's a good film, because it's ultimately not. Guys, thanks so much for watching. If you are new here, make sure to like, share, subscribe. Like to support me on Patreon like John Bailey, like Brett Persing, like Fan, you can do so. Link is in the description below. If you'd like to buy a t-shirt, a TomWasHere t-shirt, you can do so at Spreadshirt, as well as links to my eBay store, Facebook page, Instagram, TikTok, whatnot, Arena Club. The links are in the description below. But when it comes to the next movie review, or the next video in general, we will see you soon. But until then, bye everyone.